Okay, give them a couple minutes, so let's just start. And yes, welcome to the webinar on the topic of SAP Ariba Direct Material Sourcing. Um, this is a big topic, just to say it upfront. It's a very big topic. We've had customer demos talking about this topic that have been going on for multiple days even. So to look into every detail of every aspect of this solution would be something that would take much more than the half hour that we have today. So I picked a topic that's close to my heart, which is the flexible negotiation and awarding that is going on throughout the sourcing process. Um, so I will do a quick introduction of how awarding and negotiation usually work, how people usually manage that process within the sourcing process. Then we will look about how the process has actually been created for Ariba Direct Material Sourcing. And then I have a short demo prepared as a video from our system so that you can see how that actually is done in the system. And if there's any more questions about that, if you want to see it in more detail, or if you need a longer, more detailed demo, please just let me know or send me an email afterwards, and I can organize that. So about the sourcing process and where awarding and negotiation fall into this. Um, so usually the way people imagine it, the way SAP systems used to work is that awarding and negotiation or the whole sourcing process was a very, very linear process. So you create your sourcing project. The sourcing project is comparable to the RFQ that you may know from SAP systems before. So within direct material sourcing, it's called the sourcing project. So you create that one. You add your preferred suppliers that you want to invite for this process. You publish your sourcing project, and then you wait for your submission deadline. You wait for all the offers for your quotations to come in. And once you have those, you start negotiating those. And there's never really been a fully automated process within the system in SAP to do that. So usually the negotiation would happen outside of the system. And then once you finish your negotiation, you can create your awarding scenario. So you pick the supplier that has the best quotation and you award this. And then after you've awarded that quotation, you can then move on and create follow-up documents, contracts, purchase orders, whatever needs to happen after the awarding has happened. And as you can see here, the negotiation and the awarding are quite, well, decoupled. So, or only loosely coupled. So the negotiation happens, then you go into your awarding, and then you keep going on. And there's a lot of flexibility that you lose if you do this scenario within SAP Ariba Direct Material Sourcing, because the whole process has originally been designed with something else in mind. It was never meant to be linear as it is displayed here. It was meant to be a little more complex. Um, so basic something like this. The sourcing process is still going on, like the way you know it. It's still the linear process of releasing your sourcing project, getting your quotations, and then awarding in the end. But the whole process of awarding and negotiation is kind of a spiral that goes in parallel with this. So the moment you actually publish your sourcing project, you can already create your first awarding scenario. You don't have to wait until your negotiation is over. The awarding scenario can be used to help you with the negotiation. So it's a constant interplay of your awarding scenario and your negotiation. So you have your awarding scenario one in this case. And as you can see, the awarding scenario one contains two simulated quotations. So you don't even have to wait until you have any quotations before you create your first awarding scenario. You can already, the moment you publish your sourcing project, create simulated quotations, which are quotations that are basically wishing scenarios. So they will not necessarily be realistic. They can have prices that you're expecting. They can have quantities that you're expecting or hoping to have at some point. You can make as many of those as you want and combine them whichever way you want. So you can use those simulated awarding scenarios to then plan out your negotiation steps, to plan out where you want to go. Do you want to go with a one supplier strategy? Do you want to use a multiple supplier strategy that you can then award? So multiple suppliers in smaller quantities instead of giving the full quantity of the requested items to one supplier. You can play with all those scenarios. And then once you have those, and once you get actual quotations, in this case, quotation A and B, you can then create an actual negotiation round and then negotiate either the prices or the quantities or both. So with the negotiation object, you don't necessarily have to negotiate only the prices. You can also negotiate quantities. You can say, I don't want to negotiate my prices right away. At first, I want to have multiple equally valid quotations from that supplier for different quantities. So what's the price if I request the full 100% from him? What's the price if I request only 50%? Maybe I only want to request 20%. So I can get multiple quotations that are valid in parallel and have different prices for those scenarios. And then in the next negotiation rounds, I can actually negotiate those and get better prices. So let's say you get quotation X and Y, which are then smaller quantities. You go with those into the next negotiation and negotiate just the price. And maybe quotation Y was not going so well. So you have quotation X, like a new version of quotation X. So it's not a new parallelly a valid quotation. It's a new version of the same quotation with a new price. And then you create another awarding scenario. You add another simulated quotation. You try to figure out what the best way here is, and you go into the next negotiation. So you want to negotiate quotation X in the new version and quotation C until you end up with your final awarding. So with that, it's a constant interplay between the negotiation and the awarding that is used. It should happen like that. So the interplay was meant, the whole concept was created with that interplay in mind. It was meant to be used as an early help with the negotiation before the submission deadline is even reached. And a very, very important aspect is to actually fully use the quantity negotiations. With the quantity negotiations, you're not just safe to have a good price for smaller quantities or a valid price, you're also legally safe because you're not in the end awarding smaller amounts than the ones that have been requested with prices that the supplier might not be okay with. You legally already have a full quotation for the quantity that you have requested. And another thing that's very nice that's coming out of this is that the quantity negotiation doesn't have to be fully the awarding doesn't have to fully go to one supplier at or to all suppliers at the same time. You can do time shifted awarding. You can say one awarding scenario is awarded now, and then for the rest of the quantity, I want to negotiate for another 3 or 4 months and only award them later because they're not as time critical. Okay, so let's look into the system on how that looks. So I've prepared a short video on how this looks in the system. As you can see, I've created a quantity, or I created a sourcing project, and the submission deadline is next week. So we're definitely not at the end of the submission deadline. We have the published sourcing project, so quotations can be handed in, which I've already done for time reasons. And in this sourcing project, we have 3 items. The first item has a quantity of 100 split for 2 years. So there's a more complex demand handling here. Not very complex, but for this scenario, it's more complex than the other two. And the other 2 items just have a requested quantity of 100 pieces each. So I have prepared those and have added, those 3 items. And for those 3 items, I have also invited some suppliers to hand in their quotations. So we will then go into the supplier list, as you can see. my suppliers are there, and underneath the supplier quotations. So I've already, for time reasons, created 2 simulated quotations, and I've created 2 full quotations. So those are fully valid quotations that have been submitted, and then we have 2 that are just simulated. They can never be submitted. They're just a game. They're meant for me to play around with different scenarios and figure out what I want to do. The first simulated quotation, or both of them, have smaller quantities. So the scenario that I'm playing with is a scenario where I want to offer less than 100 pieces, or maybe I want to award 2 suppliers at the same time. So from my requested quantity of 100, I have an offered quantity of 60 pieces. That is my simulated quotation, and my other simulated quotation is basically the same, just with an offered quantity of 40 pieces. So we're trying to do a 60-40 split. The 2 submitted quotations are quotations that have the full quantity um, quoted. So if we look into that one, again, we have the 3 items. And as you can see here, we have the requested quantity of 100 and the offered quantity of 100. With the fully submitted quotations, I've also went a little higher in price than the target prices that I've set for myself, just to have a scenario where I have to also haggle down the prices to negotiate them down. And then to create an awarding scenario, as I said, that can be done before the submission deadline. You can do it right away. I just have to select those 2 quotations. So for this one, just 2 that are simulated, and I click on create awarding scenario, and the system does all the rest. So I have an awarding scenario where my 2 supplier quotations are added in the lower part of the screen. All I have to do is just give it a name. So here I say target awarding scenario. And I can then look into the quotations that I've added here. Here's my 2 simulated quotations. I can look into the amounts and target amounts that I've set for each item. And I can also display any field that is available within the quotation itself. So this object is basically just a bracket around your quotations. I like to call it a gift package, where you have your quotations inside, and in the end just put a bow on it. That is your awarding. And as you can see here, I have offered quantities of 60 and 40. So once I save this awarding scenario, I can find it within my sourcing project. So I have the facet awarding scenarios. It is in here. It is not awardable since it only contains simulations. So the system will tell me you cannot award this. But I can then use it to play with different scenarios. So I can make as many of these as I want to compare them to figure out what my ideal scenario is. Now I can go into the negotiation. So I will select my fully offered quotations. I click on the button Create Negotiation, and now I can select between a quantity and a price negotiation. As the name say, the quantity negotiation negotiates the quantities, the price negotiation the prices. With one little exception, in the quantity negotiation, you can also negotiate the prices. So it's a full package here. You can negotiate whatever you want in this case. This you can do on item level. So it doesn't really prevent you from, you don't have to go and say, okay, I need a 60% offer from you. You can exclude single items. You can add, or you can change quantities however you want and send those to the suppliers for the negotiation. So here we create the quantity negotiation 1, selected both of our quotations. And now we have to select the start and end date. So you can also set those in the future. You can say my negotiation is starting tomorrow, ending in a week. And then I also already prepare another one that's starting the week after and ending the week, like a week later. And you set them up, you send them to the suppliers, and you go on vacation for 2 weeks. Also a valid scenario. Within the negotiation, you can then, in the same way as in the awarding scenario, look through your offers and select the quantities that you want to negotiate or the prices. The system is freely is giving you all options here. But if you have, let's say, a couple hundred items, you don't want to do that one by one. So what you can also do is just select, for example, the whole quotation and then go to mass edit. Here you can select if you want to negotiate the target price or the quantity, or both in this case. For the price, we say we want a percentage. We want to reduce the target price that we originally had by 10% and set that as a goal. And then for the quantity, it's always set to percentage. So we set it to, let's say, 60% of the requested quantity. And then I can do the same for my second supplier. I select the target quantity and negotiation and the price. Again, a reduction of 10% and a quantity of 40% in this case. Once this is set up, all I have to do is save my negotiation and then publish it. If the negotiation is not published, it will never be sent to the suppliers. It has to be published so that it actually becomes active at the start date. Once that date is reached, I can then negotiate the quotations. In the quantity negotiation, as I mentioned before, a completely new quotation will be created. So you can see here, it's a version 1. It's a completely new supplier quotation. It still doesn't have a number, and I will just call it a 60% quotation. I can then go into each item. And one thing that's important is I am not able to change the quantities. So I can refuse to hand in any new quotations, but if I want to hand in a new quotation with a smaller quantity, I cannot change those. It will have to be that set quantity. I can then just change the price. In this case, I'm a very nice supplier and I will go down with the price even though the quantity went down for time reasons. So usually this would be a whole circle of negotiations where you go down, try to negotiate prices and quantities. In this case, I will just go down by price and quantity for demo reasons. And again, here you see the offered quantity of 60 pieces. This is not changeable. The requested quantity originally was 100. All I have to do is go down and set the price to the one that I want to set. In this case, 180 euros. And then in the last step, I will do the same on my final item. Again here, 60% offered quantity with a new price. And once I've done the prices, all I have to do is submit the quotation and it will be valid. I've cut out the part where I've done the same thing for the second quotation for time reasons. Basically what I did is do the same thing for the other quotations. So for each of the 2 quotations that I had originally, I have created a new one through the quantity negotiation. And if we jump back, we see that the quotation is ended. I've ended it early and I have 2 new quotations submitted. All 4 of them are valid. All 4 of them have the status submitted and can be awarded. So now if I want to award those, I decided to go with my 60-40 split scenario. I just have to select those 2 quotations and as before, create an awarding scenario. And here, all I have to do is look through my quotations, see if everything is fine. Again, they're displayed in the same way as before. I will then give my awarding scenario a name, in this case, final awarding scenario, and I can also set it to preferred. The preferred function doesn't really have any other function than to show you your favorites. So if you create, let's say, 50 awarding scenarios, you will want your favorites to somehow stick out, and that is the preferred flag. The awarding scenario can now be sent into approval. You can see that it is awardable, so there's checks behind there. Is there a running negotiation for them? Are the quotations all not simulated? And if all of those checks go through, then this scenario is awardable. You can also see there's 0 awarded scenarios yet, and the status is in preparation. And as I mentioned before, this is my preferred scenario. So if I want to look it up later, what are my preferred ones? What are my favorites? I can use this to actually look it up. My total amount is also displayed here, but now I want to change that. So I decided last moment, maybe I want to award the first supplier and the other one is not timely critical. So I will just remove that supplier and save it. And as you can see, the total amount changed to 32,400. So I'm not awarding the full amount. The system will also not force me to award the full amount. So I can award part of my requested quantity now, and another part, since it's not time critical, I can negotiate for another year if necessary, and then award it a year later. I will then send this awarding scenario into approval. That can be flexibly set up. In this case, it's just an automatic approval. And once the status is awarded, this quantity is then locked. My awarding scenario is not awardable anymore because it has already been awarded. And I can see here that one scenario, in this case, the same scenario, has already been awarded. This will also be displayed in any future scenario so that I know that an awarding has taken place already. Now let's assume a couple months have passed. I have negotiated a better price for my second quotation, and I will want to do an awarding, an actual final awarding now for the other quotation. So I see here, I have the quantity, the first quantity already awarded. And now I will select the other one and create a new awarding scenario just for the second quotation. This one will name true final awarding scenario. And as you can see, there's not much to it. You can set it to preferred and save it. The creation of an awarding scenario is very, very quick, so it's not a problem to create as many as you need. And here, the same thing again. It's awardable. We already see that one has already been awarded, so that we're always aware that we're here in a time-shifted scenario. But we can still award it, send it into approval, and once the process of approval is done, it will be set to awarded. And what you can see here is that the awarded scenarios is now at 2. So you see both awardings set up for this sourcing project. So now we have awarded the full quantity, which is also something that is not necessarily necessary. You can award the full amount. You can also just award a part of the amount and then close your sourcing project. The system will even not stop you to award more than the requested quantity. But always be aware where you're standing. But yes, so we have the 2 final awardings, and that has already been the demo in the system. As I mentioned before, this is a very complex scenario. We've had demos where just this process took a couple of hours. The demo of the whole tool can take a couple of days sometimes. So if there's any questions, please feel free to ask them. And if you need a more detailed demo, if you need to see more, if you have more detailed questions, please always feel free to contact me so we can set something up so that I can show you this in more detail and we can discuss anything that you need to know about SAP Ariba direct material sourcing. Is there any questions? Okay, great. Thank you. So if there's no questions, I will end the presentation now. Thank you a lot for listening. And I will share my email address within the chat. So if you have any questions or any follow-ups that are necessary, please let me know. And we can set up an appointment and go through the system live so that we can discuss what needs to be or what can be done within this tool. Thank you very much. Bye.